and certainly all the negligent and I say criminal behavior at the Food and Drug Administration, where, of course, corruption is so endemic as it's always been. But people like Thomas Loughran at the FDA, who's the head of their psychopharmacology division, and who approved Zoloft for children, and Michael R. Taylor, who's back from Monsanto after a gig at the FDA in the early 1990s when I interviewed him, and who also tried to eliminate dietary supplements. And Robert Temple, another FDA official. So all of these men banding together with the pharmaceutical companies to cover up the side effects and basically to implement their dastardly intentions on our kids.
And boy, really it's been a devastating black op. Then they have death education, teach them how to commit suicide. Those numbers explode. The good old folks at New Silver Solution. And the website is supernaturalsilver.com. Supernaturalsilver.com. This is something that kills bacteria, viruses, you name it, well documented. They've got it down to a super small nano-sized particle. Supernaturalsilver.com. Check them out at Infowars.com. KevinP.Miller, director producer of the film Generation RX, is our guest. Of course, in the early 80s, it did come out that they knew it caused massive increases in suicides, just Prozac alone. And after decades of fighting, they now admit on the Prozac and other variants, serotonin reuptake inhibitors, that it does cause that. So it's an oxymoron. And 9 times out of 10 with the cases I've seen, they put them on one drug, then it doesn't work. They put them on 2 or 3, 4, and they end up in a mental institution or committing suicide or going crazy or finally get off the drugs. But you have to get them off. You have to go off slowly, or that can cause even bigger problems. But now they have drugs to treat the drugs. I see the TV ad saying, oh, you've got mental problems from your Prozac. We'll take this drug. It'll take care of the Prozac. It's just totally sick. Please continue with the story you were telling about all these men working together to carry out this great evil.
Well, I think, Alex, it's just that, the medical ethics have just completely gone out the window. If they ever existed, they are long in the distant past by now. Because, frankly, these men, when you mentioned Prozac, the original study that we unearthed, and we found paperwork to track this, as you know, 1982 were the first tests that were done on Prozac, and they were done in Germany. And the German equivalent of the FDA basically said, there's a real problem with this drug. In the first trials alone, 16 people tried to kill themselves. And we're talking about 16 out of the first 43 or something.
And others attack people, but that's great. You put a bunch of kids on that and give them guns, then you have an excuse to ban the Second Amendment.
Well, and I've been listening to your program for many years, and I heard someone attack you once about the fact that you mentioned that the Columbine killers and some of the other people have been on drugs. Let me just put this nonsense on the other side to rest once and for all. It is absolutely a fact that at the bare minimum, 8 out of the last 12 school shooters around the country were indeed on these antidepressant drugs. It probably was at least 9 out of the last 12, but they sealed the records of one of the Columbine killers, and so none of us know for certain.
Yeah, but his friends said he was on Ritalin and Prozac, but you're right, they sealed it, and then the other one was on it.
That's exactly right. And we know that he was going to a psychiatrist. So, how many troubled kids, as you said before, would not be prescribed these antidepressant drugs? So, what they started with was something very commonsensical. They started with this, with the ADHD aspect, and they really tried to just control the kids' behavior. Then all of a sudden there was a problem. There was the DEA of all agencies coming out and saying, wait a minute, there's a problem with these with this methylphenidate, with Ritalin, with these stimulant drugs, and they're causing this vast array of side effects, and violent side effects were among them, and addiction problems and all the rest of it. And so, then they went into a big PR campaign to basically combat the DEA. And, you know, this was the mid-1990s, and there was a 734% increase in the number of kids that were prescribed Ritalin for, quote, ADHD drug from 1990 to 1994 alone, which...
And then the kids that go on the Ritalin... Then the kids that get on Ritalin tend to get depressed, so then they put them on Prozac-type drugs, don't they? And yes. Then, as kids start committing suicide and killing other people and hurting other people, there's mental illness at the school. Everybody's got to be screened now by the new freedom, and then lo and behold, the psychologists find that everybody needs to be put on drugs.
Well, here's the crazy part of it. As you say, they put the kids on Ritalin. So first they start them on a lower dose. They might be 5 years old or 6 years old or maybe even 4 years old. And then after a while, they note that same dose of Ritalin isn't, quote, working. The kid seems to be, you know, exercising his own ability and his own intellect. So then they raise the dose. Well, then what happens is it kicks in with a side effect that's very well known. After they raise the dose of the Ritalin, the child has a psychotic reaction. So once the child has a psychotic reaction, they rush the kid to the doctor because he's talking crazy and he's a mile a minute and just can't be controlled. And the doctor, instead of saying, oh, that's a well-known side effect of methylphenidate, of Ritalin, we gave him too much, we need to take him off this drug. No, they don't say that, as you know, Alex. Then they say he's bipolar. Now he's bipolar, so now we put him on these powerful, potent, dangerous antipsychotic drugs, for which there is no cure. And this is what we're doing to our
Generation RX, a film by KevinP.Miller. He's on the line with us. We'll come right back after this quick break and continue. Ladies and gentlemen, they cold-bloodedly are engaging in problem reaction solution. This was all planned out, all charted out.
Do you understand how dark it is? How far down the line we are? How late it is?
I mean, nothing, honey, if it ain't free.
I want to talk to our guest more about the film and the families he talks to and the information he brings out. It's so well done. Generation RX, available at Infowars.com. But then I want to talk about solutions, where this is going. I mean, if we don't expose these people and fight them, they're going to make everybody take drugs. And they're now to the point of trying to make the kids take it. And I had a writer for Psychology Today calling me for some big cover story that's coming out soon. And I would bring up the fact that it's not normal to have more than 2/3 of the kids on these drugs. And he would just laugh at me. I mean, it's all just a big joke to these people. It's all just a big business. A very, very sickening guild. I mean, folks, having 75% of kids on strong antipsychotics and other drugs, that isn't normal. Having 5% on it isn't normal. Somebody shouldn't be on drugs unless they were already trying to kill people and already trying to chew their fingers off, or somebody shouldn't be on these dangerous drugs even if they think they're the Pope. You know, just they're nutty and that's the end of it. No, they say all normal behavior is abnormal because it's their business model. This is the new priesthood. With the film Generation RX, Mr. Miller, continuing where we left off after that last break, how they put you on the speed drugs, the amphetamine class, which then everybody knows speed freaks are nuts. They keep upping the dose. When they stop sleeping or act weird or are up sometimes and down other times, they don't go, hey, that's what speed freaks do. Causes heart palpitations, heart enlargement, brain shrinkage, all these physical problems, they admit. No, because they're a psychiatric guild, a drug-pushing guild. They don't say, hey, our drug did that. The very culprit says, oh, yes, now we put you on Prozac. Please continue.
Yeah, exactly. And once they have a psychotic reaction and they get put on an antipsychotic medication, there basically is no cure at that point. So they tell you straight up, you could be 16 years old, 12, 11, doesn't matter. They'll tell you that you're going to be on drugs the rest of your life. And, you know, this is one of the main things that really propelled me to produce this film. I could see nothing beyond the murder and the mayhem. I could see no sanity, literally, coming out of the medical establishment or the FDA or the American Psychiatric Association. And, you know, you start seeing, when you peel back the dirty layers, you start seeing how many people who are making the decisions on these drugs are getting payola from the drug companies themselves. I mean, how can it be I think we're around the same age, Alex. How can it be that, in the record company, executives from the 70s and 80s were thrown in prison for payola for getting a few dollars under the table to get a record played on the radio? And yet we've got researchers and scientists and doctors and decision makers who are getting millions of dollars under the table, not reporting it, and still walking around free as a bird.
Well, let me expand on that, just on a separate issue, but it connects into this. You can just Google the term IRS agents cut from billionaires. And there's all these news articles where they got rid of almost all, over 90%,